وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Learning knowledge is a form of worship, and everything we do can be a form of worship if we fix our niyyah. And Allah Azza wa Jal did not differentiate between sales and riba unless or except because it is a form of worship. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Allah has made transactions and selling halal and made riba or usury haram, which means that it is a form of worship. And if you study fiqh, which is something that each and every individual should do, because the Prophet said, as in the hadith, مَن يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهْهُ فِي الدِّينِ. Whomever Allah wills good for him, He will grant him the understanding in deen, al-fiqh. So without understanding, you are ignorant, you're negligent, you're a layman. And this makes you like the vast majority of people. This is something we would like to avoid, Jazakallah khair. How to do that? By learning our deen. And the concept of learning is vast. Someone cannot come and say, Sheikh, give me the most important thing. What do you mean? What should I study? Tafsir? Or Aqidah? Or Arabic language? Or fiqh? Or usul al-fiqh? And he goes on. This is not something that you can pick up in one day. There are mandatory things, obligatory upon each and every individual. And there are communal obligations, furud al-kifayah. Mandatory things such as what?
How to pray.
How to pray. Before that, tawheed. The pillars of Islam. La ilaha illallah, ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah. What does that mean? I don't know. No, this is mandatory upon you to learn so that your aqidah is crystal clear. How to pray. Sheikh, I don't know, Maghrib is 3 or 4. I said, no, this knowledge is important. Oh, because I'm studying Arabic. I don't have time to. No, this is essential upon every individual. But the communal obligations are things that you're not required to learn them until you need them. So, what are the pillars of Hajj? Sheikh, I don't plan on making Hajj today. Maybe 6 years from now. I don't have money. So is it mandatory for me to know that Hajj has 4 pillars and this is 7, 8 conditions, mandatory things? What are the things that break your ihram? What are the restricted? No. You don't have to know these. And likewise, sales and transactions. If you're not a trader, if you're not someone who sells and buys, why would I have to know what is al-muzabana, what is al-mulamasa, what are the types of riba? I don't deal, I don't have money. And if someone who's poor, he says, do I have to learn what is the threshold of zakat? What are the 4 categories of zakat? How to give it to, who to give it to, the 8 categories mentioned in Surah Al-Tawbah? No, you're poor. You don't need to. If you know, Jazakallah khair. So this is why the scholars, when you look in the books of fiqh, you find them categorizing it, first of all, as chapters dealing with ibadat. Ibadat meaning rituals and forms of worship, such as salat, siyam, zakat, hajj. Why? Because they started first of all with salat, as it's the most important thing in Islam after the shahada. The first thing to be questioned, and they didn't jump to salat. No, they started with the conditions. You cannot be accepted, your prayer cannot be accepted without purity. So they spoke about the chapter dealing with purity. purity depends on water. So they started to talk about the types of water. Tahir, Tahur, Najis, according to the different schools of thought. There are two only, Tahir and Najis. And then they started with what breaks your wudu. And then they started with the menses and for women, because it's a great deal with purity. And then they went to the prayer, which is related to adhan, etc., etc. Then they went to what you know, zakat, then sawm, then hajj. Then they moved into transactions. Why? These are rituals. Khalas, we know them. After fulfilling these obligations, now people need to eat and drink. And they see things that they like in people's possessions. The only way to get it is to get it by force. And this would mean chaos in the world. That's why Allah permitted buying and selling. You like something, it's going to cost you this much. You have the price, alhamdulillah. And after the transactions, when you are, alhamdulillah, full, had a good meal, had water and everything is, what do people usually look for? To get married. House is, yes, but it's actually what's in the house that counts. How an empty house does the job. So they started to look into marriages. So the scholars in the books of fiqh, you find books related to marriages, how it's conducted, etiquettes, then divorce, then custody, then types of divorce, custody of the children, then nafaqah. All of these are related to these things. So after you're full, after you are married, what happens? People become arrogant. People become choosy. So they may harm one another. They may kill one another. So they talk about chapters that deals with injuries, with murder, with theft, and so on. This is the logical way they cascaded things within. And this is why we thought that learning how to deal in selling and buying can be beneficial for you. Why? Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, and this is a Hasan hadith by Albani. He said, you are obliged to learn how to sell and buy before you come to the market. Don't spoil our markets. Without knowledge, you will be spoiling the markets. And he used to go in the marketplace with his stick. So if he saw two selling and buying without knowledge, the transaction is haram, he would beat them. And he said, go, learn and come back. And if you notice that a lot of the Muslims have little knowledge in transactions. And this is why we get a lot of questions. Sheikh, what's the ruling on drop shipping? Sheikh, what's the ruling on cryptocurrency? Sheikh, what's the ruling on this or that? Amazon Prime or whatever they call it. And these things are new, but they all come back to the old evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah, because this is the power of Islam, that it fits every generation till the day of judgment. It's not something that, oh, this was at the time of the Prophet, now it changed. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammad. No, this is not true. It is valid till the end of time. A lot of the Muslims in India called me. And Sheikh, we had a property or we had a car, and someone wanted to rent it from us. So we gave it to him in rent. Is this halal? I said, it depends. What do you mean, Sheikh? What are the restrictions? We have to know before you give a fatwa. What's the background? Why are you asking? It's like telling me, Sheikh, there's an apple. Can I say Bismillah and eat it? If it's the daytime of Ramadan, no. If it's not yours, no. Tell me about it. Don't just give me a question and want me to fall in your trap. So then he says, okay, Sheikh, I have a 5 room villa. And the rent of this villa is usually 300 Kuwaiti dinar a month. Good? I said, okay, that's a good price. So someone came and wanted to rent it. So I said, okay, you have to pay me 20,000 Kuwaiti dirham as a deposit. And I'll rent it to you for 5 Kuwaiti dinars a month. Is this halal? I said, of course not. This is clear riba. He said, what is the riba, Sheikh? I said, if you knew your religion, if you studied it, you would have known that this deposit is not a deposit. It is what? It's a loan. He's lending you 20,000 Kuwaiti dinar. The deposit is usually 500, so that if paint is scratched, we will fix it from that. To give you 20,000 and then you charge him only 5 dinar for the rent, this means that you are borrowing this 20,000 from him. The interest that he lives in that house for a year, for 2, for 5, for 10, he's making a lot of benefit out of that. So this is riba. And 80% of the people who speak to me fall into this. And they think it's legitimate, it's halal, because they don't have knowledge. So this is one of the benefits of learning the rules and evidences governing transactions. Now, let us define, before we go into the hadith, because the hadiths are clear, and we're not going to spend a lot of time, but the introduction is important. What do we mean by bay'? Selling. Because in Arabic, bay' can mean sell and buy at the same time. So bi'tuhu can be, or can mean I sold it, and it can mean I bought it. It's the same thing. So what is the definition of selling and buying? Different definitions. I'll give you a simple definition that might be a little bit complicated, but when you break it down into points, then you will understand just from the definition. In legislative and legal definition, selling is the exchange. What does exchange mean? Two parties involved. I give, you take. So this is selling, exchange, the exchange of what? Of something of value. So it has to have value with another person. Okay, so there are two involved, whether two persons or two entities, companies from companies, countries from countries. This is still considered to be selling. Right. Through, how is this exchange done? Through cash or credit or a halal service. So I sell you this through cash. Give me 1 fils. I don't know how much fils. 50 fils, 50 fils. So this is an exchange, cash or credit, which happens a lot of the time. Assalamu alaikum, how much 50 cents? Fils. Okay, I'll take it. Tomorrow I'll bring it for you. This is on credit. Halal? Halal, no problem. Or through a service. Assalamu alaikum, how much is this? 50 fils. Oh, I don't have cash. I can't buy it through credit. But I'll sweep the floor for you. This is a service. So I'll sell my service. Okay? It's okay. Ali ibn Abi Talib used to do this, and he used to do it with the Jews. He used to work for a Jew. We know that Salman al-Farisi also worked in the beginning to free himself, and this is well known. This is a service. So the exchange of something of value. Why do we say of something of value? Something that has no value, cannot be sold. So I will sell you a group of ants or roaches. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. What? This is something that cannot be sold because it has no value. I'll sell you a dead cow. I found it outside. This is maita. It's haram for you to sell, etc. طيب. And this would bring us to a very important issue, because in Arabic it's called mal bimal, mal. But what is the definition of mal? Mal, the most authentic definition is something that the whole community agree to be of value in order to exchange. In the old times, what was it? Gold and silver. Later on, it was banknotes. Tomorrow, if they bring rocks and they say, okay, 5 pieces of rock will get you this bottle of water, everybody agrees upon it, it's considered to be mal. In Arabic, they call it thamaniya. It has thaman, it has a value among us. Okay, Sheikh, what about cryptocurrency? Yeah, it's not the time. Wait. I know everybody's online now. Should I buy it? No, wait, yeah, Sheikh. Bravo. Wait. This will come, inshallah, later on. So, the exchange of something of value with another, whether through cash or credit or halal service, forever. Why do we say forever? Because if I lease you my car, this is an exchange. You're giving me money every month, and I'm giving you my car. Is it forever? No. This is time. Then this is not selling. This is renting. And the law is different. The rules are different. So forever, while not being riba, this transaction is not riba and not a loan. Because riba is exchange. Give me 100 dinar, I'll give it to you 110. So can we say that this is selling? No. But there is an exchange here of something of a value, and it's credit and cash at the same time. Yes, but Allah says, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ. Allah made selling halal, وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, which means that they are two separate things. So it cannot be defined with sales. This is the evidence. Easy to understand, inshallah. Right. And a loan is also exchange. I'm giving you this money and you're returning it back to me, but there isn't something that is being exchanged in return, except the reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is why they call the contracts of loans to be عقود إرفاق وإحسان. It's not a transaction of exchange, it's a transaction of being kind and compassionate to your brother. Why do I lend you money? Because I want to help you. There's nothing else, no strings attached. So these are the main definition. When you break it down, it helps you understand. So now when someone says to you, I want to do this, you look at the definition, how it's broken down. You say, no, there is one condition that is not fulfilled. This is not halal. This is not this is not that. Now there are, as stated by scholars, 7 conditions for the transaction to be halal. And where did they get it from? They got it from collecting a lot of these conditions from reading Quran and Sunnah. And this is why scholars come always on top. And this is why it's frustrating when someone comes to you who does not know Arabic, who does not know the basics of fiqh, who has never studied, and you tell him about the rule and say, what's the dalil? He doesn't even say what's the evidence in English. He says, what's the dalil? What's the dalil? What's the dalil? What dalil are you talking about? He says, no, I need to know your dalil. Ya akhuya, fakhanni Allah rahmah, dalil. Do you know the basics of the Quran? Do you memorize the Quran? Do you know hadith? He said, no. Do you know Arabic? He said, no. But I need to know the dalil. You don't have the basics. You go to a neurosurgeon and he says, we have to do this procedure and because of this and this, and show me what's your dalil. he'll kick you out of the hospital. You're not qualified. You didn't do even first year of medical school. So it's not wrong to ask for the dalil when you're qualified, when you have little of knowledge, when you would like to understand. So if you have an ambiguity, a question, a doubt, so you say, okay, Sheikh, Jazakallah khair for the ruling. I've read that this and this and this and this and this and this, and it goes against what you've said. Now you're putting forward an allegation that I can give you my point of view. But when you come from out of the blue and you say, I need to know the dalil, give me the reference number of the hadith. What hadith? I'm answering the question. If I memorized the number of the hadith, I would have been with the major scholars of Islam, not coming here to the lesson with all due respect. What are you talking about? Give me a break. So you have to ask for the dalil when you have background. These 7 conditions, of course, I'm taking it from Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen, our Sheikh. They all revolve around preventing riba, preventing dhulm, transgression, and preventing ambiguity. These are extremely important in any transaction between you and even your brother, your sibling. You cannot just do a transaction and say, khalas, he's my brother, he's my friend, he's my colleague. There has to be, these things have to be eliminated. You can't go with a taxi driver, Assalamu alaikum, take me to Jabriya. Okay, how much? No, that's okay, we will not have a dispute. And when you reach, you'll have gunfight. You bring a plumber, don't work without asking how much he's going to charge and then give him the permission. You think it's going to cost you 100 fils? He says it takes 10 dinars. No, there has to be no ambiguity, no oppression or transgression, no riba. So what are these 7? This is not related to the dawrah. It's general introduction. And Isha is in 15 minutes, so I don't want to go to the hadith and break it for salat. يا رجل يقول 37 اوه انتم مو زينا احنا مطلع خيانات. طيب ايش اسوي يعني؟ وش اسوي؟ كمل ولا؟ Okay, let's go. As long I'm, we have wrong calculation in al-Qura calendar. Only in Isha, the 4 salat are perfect. But Isha, they fixed it to an hour and a half from sunset throughout the whole year. This is wrong. Usually it's 60 minutes, maybe 70 minutes is most, maybe it's 50 minutes after sunset. To fix it at 1 and a half is wrong, especially for sisters. Because our sisters home, there is, like I just thought, 15 minutes for Isha, when Isha is out in 5 minutes. So they're praying it not yet on time, which is very dangerous. Anyhow, this is not our topic. So what are the 7 conditions? Number 1, consent. What does consent mean? That the both buyer and seller, they're doing it willingly. So if I come to a person who has a car that I like and I want to buy, he says, I'm not interested, and I put a gun to his head. He says, now you're interested. I said, yes, definitely I'm interested. And he sells me the car officially. Is this halal? Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارَةً عَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنْكُمْ. It has to be out of consent. Both of you are happy. And this is why sometimes you may engage in a transaction unwillingly. Your father-in-law comes and he said, sell me the property. Please, come on, you're my son-in-law. Uncle, you're wanting to buy it half of the price. I want to, come on, I gave you my daughter. I regret this, uncle. But what can I do? I'm stuck. So, but he insists on you. Out of shyness, out of bashfulness, you agree. This transaction is haram. Because he knows that he forced you and you accepted unwillingly. Now, the second condition is the person engaged among the two, buying or selling, has to be authorized to deal. What do we mean by authorized to deal? Number one, he has to be free, not a slave. Why? Because the slave does not own. And this is something we may talk about later, about slavery, about the things that may confuse a lot of the Muslims. Why there is slavery in Islam? This is oppression. Where is human rights? Where is Geneva Convention? We will come to that later. But a slave who has the state said, mashallah, it's not yours. Okay, what about my Apple Watch? It's not mine. It's my master's. Everything a slave owns and possesses is belonging to his master. So when you see a slave riding in an AMG E63, 2022, Barbados, and you want to buy this slave, his master says, okay, I'll sell him for 1,000 KD. You give him the 1,000 KD, he says to the slave, bring me the car, bring me the watch, bring me your shoes, just only wear one thobe, one dishdasha. And you say, Akhi, I bought the slaves, yes, but not everything. Everything else is mine. So condition to be authorized to deal, one, you have to be free. Two, you have to be an adult. A child with a checkbook coming to a car dealership and he says, I'd like this car and here's the check. This is not halal, that's not permissible because he's not authorized. He's still a child and the kind of accountability is uplifted. If he hits someone, if he does a crime or whatever, Allah Azza wa Jalla will not hold him accountable. As the hadith 3, the pen is uplifted from them. 1, a child until he reaches the age of puberty, a sleeping person until he wakes up, and an insane person until he regains his sanity. Hadith, everybody knows about it. Number 3, he has to be sane. What's the opposite? Insane. Someone who's insane, just out of the loony hospital, and he says, I want to buy this, and he gives you money. You cannot sell him. He's not mentally fit. Number 4, he has to have sound judgment. What's the difference between this and being sane? No, you may have someone who's sane, but he has no sound judgment. He finds something that's worth 1 dinar, he pays 10. And he possesses something that's worth 10 dinars and he sells it for 200 fils. So he's sane, but his judgment of selling and buying is a nightmare. So these are the 4 conditions to be in a person who's sound or authorized to deal. So we will pause here inshallah and we will continue with the remaining 2 conditions, correct? Yeah, if we're gonna continue like this, then I have to go into teaching mode, which means that I will ask you what I have said, and then I'll ask you to stand up and maybe ask you to do push-ups. Watch out, I'm very vigorous on this. May Allah make things easy. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Sheikh.